You know, it's we're up against a mafia.
Who's the mafia?
This Sharif and these crooked politicians. Mafia means that their interest is, you know, to keep the system going, a corrupt system where they make a lot of money, and they're all billionaires, and they don't want anyone to challenge it. And so if you challenge them, then they go after you. So in my case, they've got so many cases against me, Supreme Court and Election Commission.
Right.
So it's a fight going on for the, you know, against the status quo, people against the status quo.
So you think they're trying to throw in as many nuisances as possible?
Yeah, it's a deterrence. Somehow to, you know, get me off their back.
Right. And does it deter you at all?
No. I've been fighting for 21 years.
I'm in Pakistan to meet Imran Khan, the country's leading opposition leader, a former cricket champion, a high-profile celebrity, a global heartthrob, who for the past 2 decades has been calling for a shake-up of the political elite. Maybe little more than a slogan until a massive political scandal might just have triggered real change.
You've been here before?
No. Leaked documents from a Panamanian law firm detailed how some of the world's wealthiest people hid their money, and several high-profile Pakistani politicians were implicated.
Barking at us when we were coming up, so you've got good security.
It was a scandal that would ultimately bring down Pakistan's Prime Minister. The moment Imran Khan had been waiting for. I watched Khan arrive at court to appear in front of judges to answer long-standing contempt charges. Khan had ruffled a few feathers in the judiciary, called them a few names, since crying foul over the elections in 2013. But the case was dismissed when he said sorry, and they accepted his apology.
The problem with the institutions is that they are not independent anymore. Nawaz Sharif and Zardari both, they have manipulated these institutions, they have put their cronies on top. They can't function, you know, in a regular manner anymore.
Khan and his supporters believe today's hearing and many other cases against him are part of a campaign against him by a corrupt political elite, one that he says is increasingly desperate. Most recently, he says, trying to get him on side with an offer most could not refuse.
Just remind us how much you say they offered you to keep quiet about the Panama Papers.
Well, there was, I was offered quite a small sum of $100 million. And that was the starting point. I mean,
are you sure it was from them? It wasn't some middleman who might not have been connected to them?
I know, look, I know there's a Chinese proverb, know your enemy. I know the animals I'm fighting against. I've known them for 40 years. They have bribed their way up. In 1985, there were these non-party based elections. That's when the Sharif emerged, the Sharif family, mafia, and then they started buying politicians. So that's where corruption went through the roof.
Nawaz Sharif and his PMLN have played a major role in shaping Pakistan since the 1980s. So the Supreme Court's decision to disqualify Nawaz Sharif and his subsequent resignation shocked Pakistan. But did the Panama Papers scandal and its fallout give us an example of a system with real checks and balances? Or was it just a temporary setback for an untouchable political class?
So you're talking of a rotten, corrupt system. And then we see the news that the Supreme Court disqualifies or removes Nawaz Sharif. And we go, system can't be that rotten.
This is the first time the Supreme Court of Pakistan has stood up to the powerful. Our history has been that the Supreme Court has always gone with those in power. So that's the change I'm talking about. And the change is because the public opinion stood firmly behind the Supreme Court and wanted justice. And this was not easy. It was a 1-year struggle. It was 1 year of us coming on the streets, public demonstrations, all demanding that once the Panama revelations took place, the Panama leaks took place, and the Prime Minister's family, we discovered, had these billions of rupees of properties in London, then everyone wanted answers. It was a big victory for Pakistan. And so, yes, the answer is that this is what gives us hope now.
Imran Khan seems to feel like he's riding the crest of an unstoppable wave. And with the next general election just around the corner, I wonder how the ruling party feels about his allegations of rampant corruption, about his claims that the next election is his for the taking.
Hey, how are you? Good, good.
Fine. He says you guys tried to bribe him with $90 million or more to keep quiet about the Panama Papers.
His cost is not so much as he is saying. And we, frankly saying, we are not afraid of him politically.
He thinks he's going to be the next Prime Minister next year.
He is thinking from last many years, and if you saw his tweet on 2013, he said same. But I think the PMLN's Prime Minister will be the next Prime Minister. And because this is decided by the people of Pakistan. And in last 4.5 years, in all elections, we have a landslide victory. So, and also I told you that in the all polls, all surveys, still PMLN and Muhammad Nawaz Sharif is most popular leader in the party.
The big difference now in Pakistan is that the entire population wants a change. And why do they want to change? Because of this awareness, the great advantage of social media is the speed at which information travels. It's unprecedented in human history. The social media, everyone knows what's going on.
Right.
So the corruption of the two main parties, the heads of the two main parties, that has never been exposed as it is now. And the link between corruption and the demise of the people, where the connection has been made for the first time.
There are currently 3 main political parties in Pakistan. Khan's opposition PTI, the other main opposition, the Pakistan People's Party, where the name Bhutto or Zardari is worth its weight in gold. And then there's the ruling PMLN, where the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, his daughter Maryam, and brother Shahbaz Sharif are all big political players. This is a country where there's deep loyalty to tribe and class, where family dynasties are the norm, not the exception. For many voters in this democracy, once you choose your party, it's like committing to a family. And who disowns their family?
How are you going to crack open those loyalties?
Actually, this traditional voting pattern has already been broken. The PTI has emerged as the second biggest party. This was 4 years back. And that's because the young, even though their parents were in some other parties, the young have actually gone for change, and PTI reflects, for them, it reflects change. And I think Pakistan is on the verge of huge change. It's a soft revolution taking place in Pakistan. Various reasons for that. Main reason is that the two old traditional parties have crashed. Crashed in the sense that they've been in power so long, taking turns, and have not delivered. As far as Nawaz Sharif goes, there was a song when I was in university by Elton John. It was called Goodbye to the Yellow Brick Road. That's what it is for him. It's goodbye to him. He's never going to ever play a part in Pakistani politics. Jail is staring him in the face.
Khan's confidence that people will choose him in the next election speaks for itself. But will his words translate into votes in the upcoming polls?
So come next year, there's an election, you're old enough to vote. Who are you going to vote for?
I vote Imran.
Because he's a better candidate than Nawaz Sharif, and we want someone new who can come in and make our country a better place.
For some, their opposition to Khan is nothing personal. Others say his prior sit-ins made it impossible for the ruling party to make any progress.
I have one question for you. What do you think about Imran Khan?
I don't mean to say Imran Khan is the problem for Pakistan, but what I mean to say is if I'm doing business and someone comes to disturb me, then I won't be able to do my work as well as I can.
If traditional voting patterns really have been broken, then my time talking to people in the market has told me the shift is coming from the youth. Pakistan is a young nation, with the median age at just 23 years old. Their vote could play a big part in deciding the next election. I went to see members of Imran Khan's party's youth league, led in by a young man named Arsalan, to sit down with him and his colleague Naila.
If you look at Imran Khan's struggle, he has struggled 20 years for Pakistan to bring change in Pakistan, to waken up the Pakistani common people, to waken up the youth. His continuous struggle has brought him to this level that today Pakistani people do trust him, youth trust him. 65% youth of Pakistan mostly does support the Imran Khan.
Whatever he is doing is just for Pakistan, not for himself, not for party or not for anyone else. He is just doing for the people of Pakistan.
Khan got 17% in the last election, one he said was rigged, and gained control of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or KPK province. While Khan's party claims they've made big gains in KPK, his critics, including high-level defectors from the party, claim Khan has failed the test of governance, with money unfairly allocated and KPK lagging behind other more successful provinces run by the ruling party. So, is Khan a new face on an old establishment? In Pakistan, nothing says establishment more than being accused of being the army's man. The 500,000-strong army wields immense influence in Pakistan. So, is Imran Khan their next prime minister of choice? When you look at his track record, Khan's a complicated guy. He supported General Musharraf's coup in 1999, only to later oppose him and call him a military dictator.
Are you the army's man? That's a claim that has been doing the rounds in op-eds recently. The real power in this country is not with the prime minister, it's with who chooses the prime minister, and that's the army chief, and that's the army establishment. And I've heard before, for many years, people say Pakistan is an army with a geography or an army with a country. Are you the army's man?
People in Pakistan, there is a consensus that the army should never ever form government again. There should never be a martial law. There's a consensus across the political divide, and in fact, the army chief for the first time gave the statement again and again that they believe in the constitution, they believe in our democracy, and they believe in strengthening our democracy. So, I mean, they've ruled out martial law. That's one. Secondly, these allegations are made by PMLN, Sharif's party. Bear in mind, you know, as they say, it takes a thief to catch a thief, because a thief's thinking is like a thief. He was a child of the martial law. Nawaz Sharif was groomed by generals. So he thinks, and their party thinks, that everyone is like them. PTI is the only party that has never had help from the establishment.
Pakistan's military establishment is as mysterious as it is powerful. While Khan claims his political fortunes are not connected to their silent endorsement, he will need them on side if he's to be able to tackle some of the country's biggest challenges. Ranking high among them, Pakistan's increasingly tense relationship with the United States, highlighted recently when Donald Trump put Pakistan on notice.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
We can no longer be silent about Pakistan's safe havens for terrorist organizations, the Taliban, and other groups that pose a threat to the region and beyond.
At risk is the hundreds of millions of dollars of annual aid from the US. The charge against Pakistan is that it fights one Taliban at home but supports another in Afghanistan. And the militant networks they allegedly support have been blamed for setting Afghanistan on fire.
The Afghan government has failed to provide governance to the people. It has failed to develop consensus, reach out to the opposition. It is being perceived by what the Taliban are, what are the Pashtuns. It is perceived as an American-backed puppet government. If you read the history of Afghanistan, never have they ever accepted foreigners. They have never accepted puppet governments. If you go back to the British, when they occupied, even before the British, from Mongolians downwards, they've resisted all foreigners. How could possibly 2,000 to 2,500, that's maximum how many Haqqani network or Haqqani Taliban would have been in Pakistan? So is it possible that for 2,000, 2,500, just because of these people, 150,000 NATO troops, over 200,000 Afghan army, they could not win in Afghanistan in 16 years? Is this plausible? Trump doesn't understand Afghanistan. He doesn't understand the history of Afghanistan. Pakistan lost 70,000 people dead in this war which had nothing to do with us, only on behest, fighting on the behest of Americans. Over $100 billion lost to the economy. And then to be blamed for the American total failure in Afghanistan, I think it's a travesty.
So if you become prime minister, what are you going to do? Tell Donald Trump, get lost? We're not your lackey, we're not fighting your wars for you?
Well, I would tell Donald Trump that the only two countries at the moment that are most interested in peace in Afghanistan. One is Afghanistan, the other is Pakistan. When there is terrorism, civil war in Afghanistan, this country gets affected. I mean, they're never, if in 16 years, half of Afghanistan is still under the Taliban, it's quite clear that you cannot eliminate them. So the other option is then to get them onto the table, develop a government of consensus. If this trouble keeps going on, if there's no peace in Afghanistan, the real danger is that groups like ISIS, imagine if they start getting power, they are far more dangerous than Taliban.
In a country that's faced more than its fair share of terrorism, Imran Khan's willingness to sit down with groups considered extreme is one of his most controversial features. While defeating the Taliban remains a top security priority for Pakistan, there are other emerging domestic security issues. Among them is the rise of right-wing groups. As I made my way through Islamabad, I noticed many parts of the city were essentially shut down. Cops and military everywhere. Containers blocking roads. A religious group was marching through the city. Barelvis are a large Muslim denomination within South Asia. These Barelvis are part of a block of Islamist groups known as Tehreek-e-Labbaik Ya Rasulullah and are known for being a little spikier than the rest.
Okay, are you cool?
I met one of their leaders, Ashraf Jalali, in a not-so-private interview.
It's a lot of cameras. I think your team has more cameras than my team. Yeah?
I asked him what he thinks of Imran Khan.
I consider that Imran Khan is not leader of Pakistanis. He is planning, and the one hand that is not visible for us, he is behind him. He is not hero for us and not leader for us, but he was also supporter Salman Taseer. So that we hate Imran Khan.
Who is behind him?
It should be a hand of Jews and Christians. It is possible.
Do you want Pakistan to become more Islamic, or do you accept that under the constitution, even though it is the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, it is still a secular country with secular democracy at its political heart?
We hate liberalism, and we want in coming election the system of Nizam-e Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Pakistan.
These Barelvis believe in strict enforcement of blasphemy laws. They urge the state to mete out divine justice against alleged blasphemers. And if the state doesn't act, they support taking matters into their own hands, as seen in the case of Salman Taseer, a Pakistani governor who was murdered by his own bodyguard for speaking out against the blasphemy laws. They were proud of his murderer, Mumtaz Qadri. They hung his picture proudly alongside that of Dr. Jalali. Support for right-wing groups is increasing in Pakistan. Labbaik Ya Rasulullah came third in a recent Lahore by-election. Along with another right-wing party, the MML, they won 11% of the vote. But this trend doesn't worry Imran Khan.
You can't have a tiny minority dragging a huge majority towards them. It doesn't happen. All that happens is that when you have these fringe groups, you bring them into the mainstream, they always converge towards the center.
Imran Khan seems to really believe that groups on the political fringe eventually compromise, and in doing so, their participation strengthens democracy. But Khan also stands fully behind Pakistan's blasphemy laws. Doesn't that position weaken it? Among Tehreek Labbaik Ya Rasulullah's demands, that the law minister step down. They claimed he wanted to open the path to political leadership in Pakistan for people they label heretics. Their protests took a bloody turn. And just weeks after we met them, the army brokered a deal. The minister resigned. The government blinked first. There's little doubt that these Barelvis strike fear in anyone who may choose to oppose them. I questioned whether Khan's support for blasphemy laws was more about appeasement and rooted in fear more than honest belief.
This is not true. Blasphemy law is important for Pakistan. Why is it important? This law was not made by Pakistanis. It was made by the British when they were ruling India. What used to happen? If there were different people of different religions living in a community, there would be riots if someone insulted someone sacred to the other religion. People would get killed. There'd be lynching mobs. To stop that, the British then brought the blasphemy law. The law says you can't just take law in your own hand. You can't just lynch someone by blaming him, be the judge, jury, executioner. The problem is not the blasphemy law. It is the abuse of blasphemy law.
Given that 62 people who didn't have their day in court got killed during that process since 1990.
So
you're saying it will create lynch mobs, but the lynch mobs have already got to those people.
No, but that's, people are blown up in mosques. Right. I mean, far more people, there are bombs going on in mosques, and more Shias are being killed than people in blasphemy things. So we are at the moment, we are still having a fallout of 1980s when we joined the jihad in Afghanistan against the Soviets. We have these sectarian groups which then go and kill people, saying, which actually do exactly what we are trying to stop. Those lynching people for blasphemy, exactly these sectarian groups are doing the same thing.
Forget about politics for a second. We need to talk about cricket. Not just because that's a decent clip to mid-wicket from me, but everywhere you go in Pakistan, the sport feels like the one thing that unites everyone in this country. Khan's sporting past can't be dismissed as trivial. He wasn't just a cricketer turned politician. This was the man who carried the hopes of tens of millions and realized their dream as their World Cup winning captain and gave a dignity and pride to Pakistan that is still not forgotten. My time with Imran Khan was up. He's an interesting guy, a man largely shaped by his interactions with the West, but his largely anti-Western thoughts bolster his support here. He's undoubtedly a leader, but whether he's a principled or pragmatic one, or something in between, has been tough to determine. A man who feels strongly that his country is misunderstood. A land whose beauty goes unseen to the outside world.
You know, the diversity in Pakistan is probably more than any other country. It has the highest gradient. From the highest to the sea point, Pakistan has the steepest gradient. So it has 12 weathers all along the way, from alpine all the way down. And it has then east to west, it changes completely. It has 4 different mountain ranges. And, you know, it has one of the most fertile lands. But just like in Congo, you can have all the resources in the world, but if you have corruption, the whole country goes down.
When you visit Pakistan, you see a country humming with democracy. But it's a restless hum. There's a perception that Pakistan is a country teeming with fanaticism that is one false step away from the crazies having possession of nuclear weapons. That's not true. But it's also not a truly stable country. I wish I could tell you which direction it'll take. I don't know. But I was struck by the optimism of its young people. In a country of 200 million people, does its leader have a duty to represent the nation's diversity or the will of the majority? Khan's been described as a populist. In Pakistan, can populism create peace or pogroms?